Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa and Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is intentional living. Amazing people like you share ways to live by design and with purpose to ensure that this short ride of life occurs with choice, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-giving knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and creating a positive impact through intentional living. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Laura Xiao, the founder and CEO of Henne Organics, a luxury organic brand based out of the lovely coastal city of Wilmington, North Carolina. And Laura, welcome to the show. I love having a beauty brand that is organic. Tell us more about it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. So we are what I consider a luxury organic beauty brand. We primarily focus on lip care, but we also have some other products, in the skincare category and body care. And we're certified organic by USDA, and we're also Leaping Bunny certified cruelty-free. So we don't just talk the talk, we also walk the walk. And as you mentioned, we're based in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is, I would say, a new-ish home base for us. We've been here about 3.5 years, but we love it. And I just think it's the perfect city for us to both create our products and just have our Henna HQ.
Oh, I love it. Well, we love talking to entrepreneurs and especially women. And, when you have a lot of different experiences as an entrepreneur, there's the day-to-day things, there's your client, there's all the building, but then also like your location and language and who you're talking to and all of the things that are happening with that. I'd love for you to share some of your experiences about running a business as a first-time generation immigrant.
Yeah. So if I'm being completely honest, and I just want to start by saying I love my parents. I have a great relationship with them, but I wasn't really raised to have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I say this with the utmost respect because my parents immigrated here. My dad came here first. He was, very, very smart, very hardworking. So he got essentially a full ride scholarship to continue his education in the States. He saved up money and managed for my mom to come here. And then I came here when I was about 2.5. And so, they were very poor when they first came here. My dad, I think, had around $40 in his pocket. And my mom went from having a college education back in China that she had a college degree to cleaning hotel rooms, I think it was the Holiday Inn. So it was very different from them. And they were, like I said, very poor when they moved here. And so I think it's natural when they go through those hardships that they hope that their child, and I'm actually an only child, that their only daughter is going to take a safer path, the path of least resistance, get a safe job. My dad used to tell me, why don't you become a college professor? And my dad has a doctorate and he's like, you can get tenured and you can, it's just, he felt like safety.
Right.
And I understand where they're coming from. But I think, I wouldn't say that I was planning to be an entrepreneur when I was younger, but I think just my natural personality was I think they could tell by the time I was in my early teens that being a professor was probably not in the books for me. And they just had to kind of accept that I was going to take probably a drastically different route than what they had in mind.
Right. Well, one of the things too is if you asked your parents today, what do you do? What would they say?
I think, they would say that Laura has a beauty business. I think that's how they would say. And they're very proud of the business these days. They are. And, they think it's fun. I think my dad always wants the highest resolution photos of all of our products and our shoots so he can look at them on his computer. So it's very sweet. But these days, I think, of course, these days they're very proud and they're glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. But even when I first launched Henna, they were, it's not that they weren't supportive, but they were scared for me and worried for me, like, what happens if it doesn't work out? And I said, well, then I was like, thankfully I'm in a position where I can try something else, and it's also, I was in a very, very different place in my life compared to when they were in their 20s. You know, they came to the States in their late 20s. I launched Henna when I was 26, almost 27, and I had a little bit of money saved by then from previous work I'd done. I wasn't, you know, needing to go to the Salvation Army to get toys for my child because that's how little money I had. You know, it's just very different situation. And so of course it's easier for me to say, you know what, if it doesn't work out, I'll be fine. Right. My parents were in a very different situation. They had to think about a child back in China that they were hoping to bring to the States and start a life with. So, you know, like I said, it's just completely, but without that and them doing all those things, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur because I wouldn't have these opportunities. So,
Right.
you know, everything I think in that sense happens for a reason. And I also think that, you know, Henna, I wouldn't say we're a mega success or anything, but Henna being a business that is still standing today and is profitable and we are growing, I think also is for them a testament to like, look, it was worth it, right? All the hard work that we had to put, you know, had to go through, and maybe things that we had to do that we didn't want to. It was worth it because our daughter's doing well. And that's, you know, you said you have children. That's really all you care about at the end of the day. And I have a daughter now too. And she's only 11 months old, but now I just think all I want is for her to have the best and happiest life possible. And
Right.
yeah. So
yeah, no, I love it. I think it's great that kids get to see like different ways of being. I mean, my dad, you know, worked for the government for like 43 years, right? And so they were used to that. My mom came from an entrepreneurial family, so you know, getting to see the difference of that, and you know, I'm sure seeing your parents work hard, you know, that builds like an ethic of, oh, you work hard, and as an entrepreneur, you know, you learn to do that. But then as you make choices, whether it's, you know, family, when you got married, you know, trying to just put all of those things together. So, you know, you went to another country, right, into Sweden, right, as with your husband. So how was that as another cultural change and growing a business in yet another country?
yeah, so I actually got a lot of the inspiration for our brand when I was living in Sweden, and my husband is Swedish, and we, you know, not to go too deep into our business, but you know, we do a lot of everything from like Scandinavian branding to ingredients, and so it's a very much a part of our business and our products. But I think it was really good for me in the sense that prior to living in Sweden and living abroad, I don't think I had hardly any appreciation for nature, in the sense that I grew up mostly in the Midwest, in the suburbs. So you have think about more of your cookie cutter lawns, and you know, the grass is very nice, but you don't have any kind of nature that just makes you almost just sit back and, you know, you're in awe, like, wow, I can't believe this is so incredibly breathtaking. Although my dad might differ because he does love these nice pristine lawns. And so when we moved to, you know, not even when we moved to Sweden, but when I first started dating my then boyfriend, now husband, is Swedish, I just thought, you know, it's such a beautiful country. It really is. You have so many lakes and such easy access to nature. And I think it started changing me, where I always thought like, okay, I just want to be a city girl. I only want to live in big cities and I don't care about that. And I really started appreciating also life moving a little bit slower, you know, spending time during the summer. Swedes are very big into nature, but also on really taking time to spend with your family. And also, like I said, taking time to just slow things down. And so I remember when we first started dating, we used to go to his grandparents' farmhouse that I think they did sell it in recent years, but it used to be in the family since I think the late 1800s. And so it was the farmhouse is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it is really idyllic. You know, you don't have a ton to do out there. You know, there's like stray cats, and there's, you know, berry picking, and it's just a different type of life, and it's really nice. You know, it's easier to unplug. And I think it started making me realize that maybe living in a bustling city in the long run is not actually what I want. And these days, you know, we live in Wilmington, and Wilmington is not a big city. It's a smaller city. We've got lots of beaches, lots of nature. And I think that, you know, had I not lived in Sweden or not lived in other places abroad, I don't think that I would be living here today. I don't think I would have agreed. But this was actually our mutual decision. You know, we both decided we wanted to move to a smaller place. And so, yeah, I definitely think living in Sweden influenced that a lot.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and that's the beauty of being able to travel as freely as we do, is to be able to have different experiences. I'm in San Diego, California, and it's like we've got great weather. It's beautiful by the ocean. Yeah, but I love traveling, right? And so it's fun. And I also spend part of my time in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho, in a small area, right? And there's just so many beautiful things to be in an environment that has beauty, that has kind of those old fashioned values where you actually know your neighbors, and those kind of things actually happen. So I think that's so great. And so going back to your entrepreneurial journey, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, how you relate to fear and how fear pops up into it and how you look at it. How have you decided to kind of orientate yourself to fear, and what are some of the things that you do to get past some of those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I am human. I have fears, I have worries, I have anxiety sometimes. But one thing that's really worked for me, and I think it's coming from a sports background, is two different types of visualization. So when you're thinking about positive things, they always tell you in sports, you visualize the win, you visualize every little step that you do. So when you're in that moment, it feels like it's just another day at practicing, right? So it's nice and fluid and smooth. But it's also about, for me, when it comes to fears, visualizing my fear. And what I mean by that is sometimes if I just even, whether I close my eyes or just look up and visualize, sometimes, let's say you worry about something in the future. And then I think about, okay, what's the worst that can actually happen? And I think about it. And of course, sometimes it's scary, and it, of course, is not something pleasant I want to happen. But I realize that I can overcome it. Like I can get through it. And oftentimes, some of the things I fear, especially when it comes to business, are not as terrible as I initially thought. When I actually stopped visualizing, like, okay, if this happens, what do I do? Right? Or if this were to happen, how do I get through it? And then I usually think of some kind of, I don't have to think of the exact solution in that moment, but just visualizing it actually kind of makes the, monster in my head shrink. And I realize I realize most of the time it is overinflated in my head. And it actually helps calm me. And so that's
Yeah.
just my personal method that works for me.
Oh, so good. Well, yeah, as a retired police officer, checking out scenarios and knowing, like, the worst case scenario and figuring out what you're going to do. I mean, and how many things that really served me in business, right? Because when you can look at things from all kinds of different angles, it really makes a big difference. And so when you've looked at kind of like the scary monster, if you will, and then be able to go like, okay, we got this, right? You can look at it from a different perspective, have a plan, and go forward with it. Makes a difference. And all the things from our background, all of our experiences really influence that. And you touched on sports, and a lot of people may not know you had a professional, sports journey. Talk a little bit how that influenced you, and not only how you are as a person, but in your business.
Yeah, so I played table tennis, and I always kind of say I played competitive / professional in the sense that I retired a little bit earlier. I retired when I was about pretty much 18, 19. The main reason was because back then it was almost impossible to really make a living out of it in the States. You'd have to go abroad, and I kind of had to decide between school and that. And so I did choose school. My husband, however, quick summary about him is he actually played at a very professional level. He was top 3 in Sweden, top 100 in the world for men. So he could kick my butt. Yeah, let's just say we don't really play each other because I know who's going to lose, and it's going to be me. And yeah, but back to your
Is that how
original.
you met? Is in table tennis?
Yes, it's
Oh,
actually how we met.
wow.
We met at
Oh my
US Open
gosh.
in Fort Lauderdale in 2005. Yeah, that's how we
Oh,
met.
oh, wow.
Yeah, the funny way the world works, right? Fort Lauderdale, of all places.
Right.
Joke that we need to do a trip back there just because it's where it all started. Now we've been together for 17 and a half years, but yeah, but it's interesting. Sorry, it's interesting. But
Yeah.
sorry, to answer your point, I think what's really helped with table tennis, or I think sports in general, and especially a solo sport, is accountability. I think is one thing. I'm not saying that you don't learn accountability when you do a team sport, but when you're doing a solo sport, you really can't blame anyone else when you lose, and you will lose. You will not be undefeated forever. Everybody, even the best of the best, they lose at some point, right? And then when you lose, you have to really like truly look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, or think about, okay, what could I have done better? Did I really do my best? Or, did I choke? Or you have to hold yourself accountable. And I think just losing in itself I do think it's something that's important to experience. I think especially these days, like I hear about sometimes, kids having participation trophies and like everyone's a winner. And I get that it's good to encourage children, especially when they're very young. But I do think as you grow up, you also need to learn that life is not going to give you rainbows and butterflies every day of the week. And it's okay. Sometimes losing is the best thing that could happen to you. You not only do you learn from your losses, but let's say whether it's business or sometimes, let's say your first idea as an entrepreneur, or even your second or third flops, but you learn from it. And because you close that chapter, you actually end up pivoting and going to where you were meant to go to begin with, So I think that just having that experience is good because you realize that whether it's business rejection or something doesn't go right, it isn't the end of the world. You will survive it. You will be able to move forward. And it could be a huge blessing in disguise and you don't realize it in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's definitely happened for me. I had something in the past, work related, where it felt like the end of the world. And I'm so grateful things panned out the way that they did, because if they didn't, I wouldn't have even launched Henna. I think a lot of us can look back on moments in life where it was actually a blessing in disguise.
I agree 100%. I think that's one of the things that we've kind of lost a little bit in this country is that whole personal responsibility. It's like we're always looking to, you see now there's so much of people being offended or, not really looking at what's going on. It's like, okay, just, hold the line here, like let's look at like, what do you have control over? And when you really look at it from that perspective, there's always something to learn and look at how things are happening for you. And, it's such a healthy perspective. And, I think there are a lot of other ways that you can affirm children but to have them grow up in, I think having some healthy competition really helps you in life to know like, hey, it's not going to always go your way, and to learn how to, manage emotions and be like, how do we get to the other side of that and be able to do that? So I think that's really a healthy way of being able to look at things. And so with you and Axel being like competitors from the start, how does that come into play, not only in your marriage, but also working together in business? There can be, a lot of ways to, how do you keep that harmony and competitive edge kind of at the same time?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, I'm not going to lie, it was tough. We both have, my husband is very calm, but he is hyper competitive, as you can imagine, and I am too. And I would say he's probably more competitive than me. I discovered that when we started dating and we had to play family board games during Christmas. I was like, oh my goodness, he is a sore winner and a sore loser with board games. It's like if he loses to me, he'd come over and kiss me like, oh, it's because I love you. That's why I let you win. I'm like, oh, you can't say that. But yeah, jokes aside, in the beginning, it was tough because we both, not only do we have to navigate this new type of position we have where it's not just a romantic relationship, but we're, business partners. But, it's hard to take constructive criticism from each other when you're that intimate with someone. And even to this day, it's not perfect. Sometimes we get a little bit offended by each other because even though we don't say anything terrible, it's just that, it's just that dynamic. But I think overall, it's really worked out well for us. I think a big reason is because we have very different skill sets that really complement each other. And we both have areas that we're great at and that we're not so great at. And we kind of fill in the gaps. And the reason I mention that is because, I think you can have a wonderful relationship with someone, a husband, wife, partner, but you might not be the best business partners for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen that with certain people we've been friends with. I think their relationships are really strong, but sometimes they try to work together and realize it doesn't work out. So that's something I do want to say, that if you do decide to have a business with your significant other, it's, I think it's good to kind of look at, okay, will this actually work? Because, for example, I think both of us being as competitive as we are, if we had the same skill sets, I think we would step on each other's toes, right? I think the nice part of us having very different skills is that we know which tasks are delegated to us. And of course, we discuss all the important things, but we also let each other do what we know that we're strongest at. And we, and also have that trust. And so, yeah, I think it's important to, when you're going to start a business with not even a significant other, but a family member, someone who you have that really close personal relationship with, maybe it's easier said than done, but it's important to kind of talk it through before you even start the business and see, okay, are we actually a good fit? Let's do a trial period. I mean, I'm serious. It might seem kind of awkward with like a sibling or something, but I think that, it can be tough working with someone you're really close to, and it can also be incredibly rewarding and the best thing ever, but I just think it really isn't a one size fits all. So in my situation, I think we're a great fit, both of course, personally and professionally, but I don't know if that can be applied to everyone.
I totally get that. Like, Carrie and I work together as well, and we have really figured out like having boundaries around that is really huge. One, saying like, okay, what time does this workday end, right? Because, especially if you do some working from home, that can blur. And also not making all your conversations about work either, right? To be a little bit more well-rounded and have, interests outside of your business. And then, one of the other things that we came up with too was that, I could see certain things because we work together, but we also have separate businesses too. So I would see certain things that he was doing and knowing that I'm not the best coach for him, right? Because it's like some news needs to be delivered from somebody who has a different perspective outside of it, right? And so sometimes you're too close to it in it as well. So really, as you mentioned, just being able to see the big picture and be able to see, okay, what part works, get really clear on, what's your lane and stay in that lane. And, so there can be a lot to negotiate around that and to see, what works. And like you said, every business is different, every couple's different, personalities, all of those things. So it's really important to look and see what are those things so that you can have not only the best results for your business, but also to be able to go home and still like each other and be able to, have that happen too. And so, again, when you throw in another aspect to it, being a mother, right? You're a mother of two and two young kids too. And so how was that transition for you and how did that change your perspective with your business?
Yeah. Well, actually, I only have one right now, but I do hope to have a second one too.
You must be pregnant because I've said that to you twice, even before we got on here. Because
I know. Oh, trust me. My parents are very, very eager to get a second one because being an only child, they literally put all their eggs in one basket, both figuratively and literally.
Right.
So my dad is just like, he would love 3 or 4, So when I was like, oh, we're definitely going to have a second. My dad's like, or a third, 3's your favorite number. I'm like, oh, it looks like you've been talking to my husband. That rationale, huh? Yeah. My husband's favorite number is 11, but I'm not going to give him 11 children, just so you know. But yeah, most likely, I definitely want a second. But just having one right now, I mean, first off, I have so much more, just another level of respect for mothers out there because it is tough. It is. And incredibly rewarding, of course. But yeah, it's just moms really are superheroes because it's, even if you don't work, if you're only a stay-at-home mom, it is so, it is so much. And like I said, of course, it's incredibly rewarding, but, having any type of balance is tricky when you have children. And so I think I am very fortunate in the sense that these days I work from home most of the time. And so that does give me immediately more access and more time with my daughter. But I think that there's also some really positive things that have come out of this balance. And I think one of them is actually realizing your priorities. I care about my business, don't get me wrong, but I care about my daughter so much more than I do about my business. There's no comparison. And now I just think in a different way. I think more, it's not that I don't want to grow the business and I don't want to, have nice things in the future, but I think more in terms of her future and how can I create, or my husband and I, how can we create this family life and this balance? And so she sees mom and dad working hard and she sees that, look what you can accomplish, but also she sees that we value her more, that she is more important to us. And so I think that we try to have at least have one conversation every week about how we really accomplish our family goals even more. And we now see the business as a means to that. Where before her, it used to be like, yes, we plan to have children in the future, but a lot of the talks were still about like, oh, you know, we hope we can, buy this house one day or move here or have these experiences. And now it's about her. And I think it's a lot more rewarding. And I feel a lot more purpose thinking about not just the future of my business, but just future overall in those terms. And I think it's more exciting too. It really
Yeah.
is. I think
Yeah,
that,
definitely.
yeah.
Now, do either your parents or your in-laws live near you guys?
They do not. My parents are hoping to move here soon. So actually, hopefully next year. They live in Kansas City at the moment. My father-in-law passed a few years ago, but my mother-in-law lives in Sweden, and we're actually going to go back in a couple of weeks to spend Christmas with my Swedish side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but she visits. She visits at least. She tries to visit at least twice a year. And so I think it's still pretty frequent given the distance. I would
Mm-hmm.
love if I had more family living even closer, but I still have a lot of family that lives in China. And then I have a few family members that live in California and the Bay Area, but it's not that close by.
Yeah, it's interesting because it used to be we had family that either lived like next door or even together with us, and we start seeing like when we have this big expanse between family or even our chosen family, like a lot of times we build that with the people who are around us. It just that also can be really supportive. And when you're doing a business and you don't have family nearby, or you haven't had these agreements with like, nanny swapping and being able to have, those kind of things, that is just like, that's like another full-time job. I think, people really underestimate, oh, it's a newborn, or, they're not, in school yet or whatever. And the amount of attention that a baby needs is like, it's a big deal. And I like to talk about it here, because I had a lot of great support from my parents. In fact, I bought a house across the street from them when my kids were younger, and I really got to enjoy that. And I forgot what it was like for other families who didn't have that near them and had that. So it's like that, choosing what's a good location and what's like the environment. It's like, it's a whole different perspective when you have children, as far as why you're doing certain things and how you want their experience to be and what that looks like. And I actually think that is a benefit to your business, because you then can relate to a whole different set of clients. And, especially with you, it's like if you've got mothers that can feel good about, their skin and how their approach, and knowing that it's healthy ingredients and all of that, I'm assuming there's like another level of reward with what you're bringing into the world.
Yeah. I mean, with our products being as clean and, as natural as they are, I always used to, tell people, of course, through our certifications and everything, these products are so safe. But talk about walking the walk. I mean, when I was pregnant, I realized like it's so nice to have products that like my own products that I can use on my body, and I feel completely safe using them when I'm pregnant. And then even now after having my daughter Stella, I use like our lip balm. I use that on myself. I have a separate jar just for her because it doubles as like a diaper balm for her. And, I don't feel any hesitation about using our products on my own, baby daughter. And it just, yeah, it feels good knowing that we have products that moms, expectant mothers and moms in general, they truly don't have to worry about having around their kids. And yeah, it's just one less thing to stress about. And so, yeah, that part definitely feels good.
Good. Well, speaking of children and kind of on the other spectrum of that, you also have a charity aspect to your business, with a specific, inclination of helping human trafficking victims and homeless. How is it that you chose that area to support?
Yeah. And so initially, when we were not based in North Carolina, some years ago, we always wanted to officially partner with a nonprofit, with a charity, and had not really found the right fit. There were some where, we would start talking, and then when we actually started asking some questions, the numbers didn't really add up. Things seemed a little bit weird. And then there was one where I think they were too big in the sense that they didn't really care about small business wanting to partner with them. So we had that as well. And then while I was pregnant last year, once again, sometimes things are just meant to be. Through our local community here, we discovered them, and I went to several of their events. I met the founders, Rick and Leanna, and I really saw the work that they do, and I realized like this is the charity that I want to partner with. And my husband felt like, we both were completely on the same page, and they are really incredible. They do so much in the community. And, when it comes to, human trafficking victims, it's that in particular, that first off is very strongly tied to homelessness, because oftentimes they are also homeless.
Mm-hmm.
But it really hits close to home. And I think especially when I got pregnant, because, a lot of these trafficking victims, not only do some of them have children with them, but some of them are children themselves. And they're primarily girls and women. And this is, it's kind of the dark underbelly of most cities and towns. I mean, it kind of exists. It really does exist everywhere. And it's something that oftentimes people turn a blind eye to, and not because they don't care, but because it's almost too sad or too depressing to think about. And, I wholeheartedly think that we, as a global community these days, need to know what's going on in the world, and that we should show, empathy and care and support for other people. But also we need to look at home sometimes, because, I think it's great, it's, of course, we need to support things in other areas, but we also can't forget about the people in our own community.
Agreed.
In every town, in every city that you're living in, there are girls and women who are being trafficked. There are people who are living on the streets, and a lot of them are, they're not so different from you and I. Some of them are veterans, others are people who ended up, in very unfortunate situations, oftentimes out of their control. And so I think that we need to sometimes look at what's actually closer to home and realize that there's a lot of people here in the States that need help. And like I said, especially when I was pregnant and finding out, during the anatomy scan that it was going to be a girl, it just pained me so much to imagine any type of little girl or young woman being trafficked the way a lot of these women and girls are. And I don't want to get too deep into it because it would probably take a couple hours, but it's, it is horrifying. But the positive note is there's so much good that can be done. And that, like, FirstFruit Ministries, which is the charity that we've partnered with, they not only help them actually help rescue victims of human trafficking, but after they help rescue them, they help rehabilitate them. And that can take a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And they have so many great things set up in place. And one of them is having really well-trained staff that actually are trained to speak and to befriend these victims, because sometimes they've never met anyone in their whole life who actually cares about them, who has no ulterior motives. And so to have these people trained to help them, let that guard down and to start to heal, that in itself is also incredible. So yeah, they do so many great things, and I think we're very, very grateful and proud to be partnered with them. And hopefully, we can do our small part. We're not a huge business, we're still a small company, but hopefully we can do our part to raise awareness when it comes to that as well. Because I think, people in every, you can do a lot of good in your community by you could do things by donating your time. You could be you could become one of those volunteers that can become a friend to someone in need. Or, you can donate blankets. I mean, there's just so much you can do, depending on your time that you have available or your resources. And it makes a huge difference.
Agreed. And I think it's so important to look locally for so many reasons. I mean, I also have a heart for human trafficking and with children. And, a lot of times I've had actually survivors on the show. And I think it's so important to listen to the voice of the survivor of that, because they've been in that. And so, a lot of times when people are really wanting to come from their heart and to give. And you're right, some of these like bigger, organizations, they're not always on the up and up, and the money isn't always going to where, you think that they're going. So when you do local and you're there and you can see for yourself like what's actually happening, not only is that more rewarding, but then that your dollars are going further and that you're getting to see that happen. So, I think it's so important that, we have this opportunity to impact our communities and to personally be involved with that and to see what's happening with it. So I think it's such an important thing for us to be looking at. And, you're right. It is like there is not a city in our country that isn't impacted by this in some way. It's not just some third world thing that, can be projected. And it's like, and it's happening in all kinds of socioeconomic too. And it's not just a poor thing. I mean, a lot of the survivors, had trafficking within their family. So it's like, it's a big thing that is happening that is important to bring awareness to, and to really look at, the stories of the victims as well, and being able to hear them and be able to go from that perspective. So I think that is so important. So and we'll be putting the links in for people to connect, with you and your business and all the things that you are up to. One of the couple final things, like you and I could talk about this for a long, long time, is, there are a lot of things happening in the world, and it can feel like, we haven't, when we create like kind of a sanctuary for ourselves, and I look at our homes as that, and I feel like, what we've created in our home allows us to kind of restore, to be able to go back out there and fight the good fight. And so we live differently in our kitchen, our bathroom, or our bedroom, or, all the different rooms that we have. What's your favorite room in your home, and why?
I would say it's definitely the living room area. That's because that's where a lot of the play mats are set up, and that's where I spend a lot of the time with my daughter. And it really, when I talk about sanctuary, it really is, because I think, I think most of us are aware that social media and just the internet, not everything is as it seems, but it can also, like you said, it can be really overwhelming, because of course there are terrible things happening in the world, but there are so many great things happening in the world as well. And sometimes, once again, I think it's important to kind of put that phone aside and actually look at what's immediately in front of you. And, most people are kind. Most people are good. Most people are helpful. And I think a lot of times when there's online spats and people arguing on, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or whatnot, it's not a real reflection of reality. Those are just that's a very tiny, percentage of the actual real population. And you almost never encounter those people when you leave the house. And yeah, my daughter is definitely my sanctuary, because she's 11 months old, and it's just so wonderful to kind of relearn what it is to be just happy over the simplest things. And that makes me so happy. And that's like the ultimate de-stressor. I used to say, before I had kids, I used to say, oh, it's working out, because I love to work out. I do. I still work out about 5 times a week, but it's really her now, because if she just smiles once at me, it really lights up the room. And she gets happy over the simplest things, like, oh, mommy's eating peanut butter, so I know I'm going to get some, right? And then she'll start clapping her hands and smiling and making all the cute, cutesy little baby gurgling noises. And I just realized, gosh, life is not so bad. She's wonderful. And look how much she loves life, right? She wakes up happy and smiling. And, I think, yeah, we can learn so much from kids. And life is more exciting. And like I said, it's more magical when you have a child, because you really, not only do you try to see it from their lens, but you try to create, plan things, and you almost start seeing things the way that they do, because you want to anticipate what you're going to do to make them happy, and what's going to, get them excited. And so, yeah, it's really wonderful. Like I said, it's a lot of work. Of course it is, but it is really the most rewarding thing on earth. Yeah. And I say this as someone who did not grow up thinking I was going to have kids. I wasn't that person who grew up like, oh, I love children. Not really. I joke that I got the motherly genes after I got pregnant. I was like,
usually
oh,
what happens.
They are. I was like, yeah, good. I'm glad I got them. A little bit late to the game, but better late than never.
Absolutely.
But now it's yeah, life is definitely very different in the best possible way.
I love it here. Well, as we are winding down, you know that our theme for this season is intentional living. In what way are you living an intentional life today?
I think focusing on family, and not just my daughter, not just my husband, but on, my extended family and my parents, actively making plans for, them to move here. And, when you were saying that you moved across the street from your parents, that is my ultimate goal. I am trying so hard to get my parents to move to this neighborhood, and I think they're coming around to that idea. because I would love if they lived across the street. Also for selfish reasons, because both my parents make very delicious Chinese food, and they're much better at making it than I am. So I wouldn't mind the free dinners, but on top of that, I just want to be around them. And I want them to spend as much time, I want us to spend as much time as a bigger family as we can. So
that'd be so great. Well, you have to keep me in the loop when that happens, because I think it's so beautiful. The more we bring family together, and for me, I think that is such a huge thing. So I just want to thank you, Laura, for just what you bring to the world, and just your joy and your impact, and the kind of entrepreneurs that really bring heart to everything that we do. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And I also wanted to thank you right back, because I think that you giving a platform to people like myself and, everything from trafficking victims, I think it's really important, because a lot of people, their stories wouldn't be heard if they didn't have people like you that can actually, be gifted enough and also take the time to make them heard. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So to all of our listening family out there, I want to thank you for spending your time out there with us. And, especially during the holiday season, like I always look at, it's the holy days. It's the ones where we get to reflect. We get to see what's important to us. And, that comes down to family. Laura and I talked a lot about family here today. And no matter where you're at with your biological family, your chosen family, whatever that is, cherish that. Carve that time out. There is a lot of busyness, and we talked about social as well, like in the fake world, right? That's out there, right? And some people may think this is part of that world too, but we get to have like real conversations, and we get to choose who we get to spend our time with. So really look at that, and no matter all the, even forget all like the shopping and all the other things, unless you're buying local and you're helping local businesses, right? Is to, really spend the time with people. That's really what is important. And to look at, what kind of impact you can make in your own neighborhood. When you look at giving back and you look around you, it's really nice when you can actually witness and see that impact firsthand, because having those strong communities and those strong families is the backbone of our country. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.